Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. It is Tuesday, June the 7th, 2022. This morning, corporate America is trying to own Juneteenth. And with the primary election session or season in full gear, voter suppression laws in 27 states. What are some grassroots organizations doing to get Black people to the polls? We discuss all that and more with award-winning journalist and columnist from the Philadelphia Inquirer, Janice Armstrong. Good morning, Janice.
Good morning.
It's good to have you with us this morning as we talk about what really affects Black America. Janice, we start with Juneteenth. In 2021, President Joe Biden signed a bill to officially mark Juneteenth, June 19th, as an official federal holiday. 1 year later, as racism continues to permeate the nation and many African Americans prepare to observe the country's 12th federal holiday, corporate America remains tone deaf at best. Social media users and others have lashed out at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis for offering a pre-packaged watermelon salad as part of its Juneteenth menu. The museum circulated a photo of the salad as it invited the public to its Juneteenth celebration. And Denise, earlier, we know Walmart came under heavy fire for its ice cream with Juneteenth, in which they wanted to trademark Juneteenth. What's going on in this country, Janice? You write a lot about various topics. You see so much happening. What's happening here? Corporate America, are they trying to own Juneteenth?
You know they are. You know they are. But that's as American as apple pie. Capitalists are going to capitalize. You got Juneteenth. You got the 4th of July. Their independence holidays. They're trying to make money off of it. But it's so disrespectful. And you think, would you do the same for the end of the Holocaust? And if you wouldn't do that for the Holocaust, why would you do this for Juneteenth? Why would you? This is supposed to be a sacred commemoration, a sacred commemoration. I'm not saying you can't sell merchandise or make money or do other things to do what you're going to do around Juneteenth, but it should be done with sensitivity. Get some Black folks involved at the highest levels, people who know what they're talking about, and you can prevent the kind of gaffes that Walmart has had, the Indianapolis Children's Museum. Get some Black folk at the top. That's really what this is about.
That's the problem, right? Because if you or I sitting in that boardroom and they're trying to make that decision, we know this is just wrong, right?
It's wrong, it's tacky, and it's terribly offensive. I mean, think about what Juneteenth is celebrating and is commemorating. It's commemorating the end of chattel slavery in the United States, where for more than 200 years, the white people made money off the backs of Black people. Now, how is it different when you have major corporations that are owned largely by white people who come along to make money off of a Black celebration of around the end of chattel slavery? I mean, people just need to think a little bit, be sensitive, and hire some Black folk. Partner with some Black businesses. Maybe this is a time to get some of these smaller artisans and mom and pop organizations and say, come on, let's get a deal going. We'll help you get your products to a larger audience, and you can help us tap into that market. Think corporate America.
That's the problem, right? And to me, one of the things that stood out, I should say, but the whole idea that Walmart would trademark or attempt to trademark Juneteenth, it goes to what you're saying about capitalism, but that is one of the ultimate insults, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, if you can tell, you saw that little TM next to the word Juneteenth. That shows that some kind of a trademark application had been applied. But I reached out to the U.S. Patent Office last week, and I got back some information saying whatever that was has since been, the application has just been abandoned. That, I think, was official as of May 24th. So, wow. I mean, how offensive is that? How offensive is that? But I almost wish somebody else would go and do it. just like the African American Museum in Washington D.C., or someone would go and do it just to prevent someone else from trying the
That's
same
a good
thing.
idea. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, look, they own slaves. Now they want to own black people's holidays. They want to own black people. They want to own black people, period. I mean,
Right.
this is
And if Black people don't
crazy.
stay vigilant, pay attention, and be mindful about what corporations you support and how you support them, they're just gonna. That's what's gonna happen. I mean, I've seen displays, pictures of displays in various stores where they have like balloons up, like those balloons shaped in like numbers 1865, and they'll have red, black, and green paper products, napkins, tablecloths, and all that. That's not the worst thing in the world. If you're having a Juneteenth party, who wouldn't want some of these supplies? But you've seen those napkins with the tagline, "It's the freedom for me." I mean, think about that.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
true.
it sounds cute on the surface, but when you think about the suffering that our ancestors went through for hundreds of years, and even after slavery officially ended in the United States, then through Reconstruction, the Jim Crow era, what were we marching about? The civil rights. What were the people taken to the streets about just recently with Black Lives Matter? I mean, think, people. Don't support these products.
Well, and Janice, doesn't this go to that whole critical race theory thing too? White folks don't want to know. They don't want their kids to know true American history, which is Black history.
Right. I mean, you can't separate Black history from American history. And there's this huge battle under the guise of critical race theory, which doesn't even get taught at the elementary school levels or in high school. It's a graduate level course, but they're saying they're making up stories about it being taught at the elementary school levels and creating this big banning books written by Black authors, LGBTQ authors. They're trying to control the narrative to keep it the way it was back when George Washington cut down the cherry tree. Yeah, well, if he did, I'm sure he used some enslaved Africans to do it. You know what I mean? How many enslaved Africans did he own? So many. Thomas Jefferson, many of the founding fathers that we look up to, and we just don't want to change anything about the Constitution because this is not what the founding fathers intended. Who cares? I mean, honestly, these
Listen,
were a bunch of slave owning misogynists who didn't even think their wives, daughters, and girlfriends should have the right to vote. Oh, why are you getting me all worked up first thing in the morning?
I was gonna say, listen, Janice Armstrong's debut on Let It Be Known, she's on fire. I'm about to turn my camera off and just turn the show over to Janice.
Oh,
Janice,
I don't get a chance to talk very much. I'm a print journalist. I just sit and write my columns, and I've been working remotely for over 2 years. Get slowly over here
you gotta let
sometimes.
it out, right? It's all got to come out.
I'm sorry
But
for talking so much.
no, that's fine. Denise Bridge, which is an organization that promotes improving diversity and inclusion, they called on Walmart to immediately remove the ice cream. But they wrote a letter, and you kind of touched on that earlier, in which they talked about how this exacerbates the lack of understanding of by laying claim to something that represents so much to an entire population. And they said, listen, Juneteenth simply cannot be owned. And the letter you can find on the Bridges website is a very detailed letter. You mentioned about them not doing this with the Holocaust, and that's what's in that letter too. They really spell it out. Just the nerve of Walmart, just the nerve of the Children's Museum in Indianapolis, the nerve of others. I'm sure there's others, Janice, we haven't even reported on yet or heard about yet.
Yes, and we're going to hear about them. And I'm not saying that businesses who want to do something in honor to commemorate or even to make money off the holiday, we know this is America, that's what's going to happen. Do it with some type of sensitivity. Get some Black folks involved at the highest level, partner with Black businesses, Black artisans, at least some Black marketing professionals to keep you out of trouble.
Well, the Children's Museum used that age old defense. Well, I got Black friends. You know what they said? They said the it was the kitchen, I believe, the staff, the kitchen staff who use watermelon salad on a regular basis in their homes, and they're black. It was that
It's
type of
true.
defense.
Right. Well, instead of going to the kitchen staff, maybe ask a marketing expert. There are PR firms that specialize in this kind of things. Or ask someone like, whose specialty is marketing to the Black community. If you don't want to use a Black firm, that's okay. But there are some white firms, I'm sure, that could know a little bit about marketing to this particular demographic. Be smart. Ask people
Yeah.
who know what they're talking about, and you
Act
won't
the
end
black
up in
press.
a situation like they did in Indianapolis. You know what I mean?
But again, it speaks to, and you said even if they turn to a white firm, but here's the thing with that too. Let's be real. You know, they need to turn to somebody black. They need to turn to black corporations, black PR firms, black companies, the black press. They need that because here's the thing: you don't know what you don't know, and these people they make these decisions, these tone deaf decisions without checking the source. If you want to do something and do it right, you're going to go to the source, aren't you?
You should. You really, really should. But there seems to be such a resistance. It's such a resistance. At least talk to some smart people with diverse knowledge of diverse communities before you make these kinds of gaffes. And we're going to see a lot more. But people, when you see it, you don't have to support it. Just because they sell it doesn't mean we have to buy it. Am I right?
Yeah, oh, you're 100% right, and that's a great point. I mean, we could talk about it. We can dissect it as we've been doing this morning of how just tone deaf, how outrageous these things are. But we don't have to subscribe to it. We don't have to purchase it. I certainly won't be purchasing the Juneteenth ice cream from Walmart or the salad, the watermelon salad from the Indianapolis Children's Museum. That's not happening. And you're right. We have to. It's like the next topic we're going to talk about in a moment. Voting, right? You got choices, right? And the choices are laid out there for you. You can't pick up. You can't vote, but so often, right? Or for more than one person. So um, when you're picking and choosing who you're going to patronize, it's up to you. It's totally up to you. And joining us is Dr. Benjamin Chavis, the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publicists Association. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning. And we thank our special guest for being with us this morning. Welcome to the Black Press.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So Janice, it's a very interesting thing. I know you're going to be writing some more things coming up. We are looking forward to the things we know what you've been writing. We're looking forward to even more, but also on this topic, millions of U.S. voters are casting ballots in state primary races to determine which candidates face off in November's midterm elections. The stakes are high for Democrats and Republicans as the outcome will determine which political party controls both houses of Congress next year. But the contest will also be a test, Janice, of new voting laws in many states that restrict access to the ballot in the name of election security. You're in Pennsylvania. You're right in the heart of things in Philadelphia. What's going on? First of all, we know what's going on around the country. I think 27 states now have these voter suppression laws. What's happening in Philly and Pennsylvania as a whole that's making sure that voters have access?
It's a lot of things, not so much in Philadelphia, but, out in the rest of the state. And we've got a really important contest coming up in November. Dr. Oz was just declared the winner of the GOP primary. There was a long recount, and the other person has since conceded. Dr. Oz is the winner. If people don't wake up, get to the polls, and vote in much larger numbers than they did in the primary that we just had, where about, I think, roughly 20% of voters turned out, at least in Philadelphia. You know who's going to be our next senator from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
People have got to wake up and get out there and not let anything stop them.
Well, Janice, you and I had a conversation offline a couple of weeks ago about Dr. Oz, and the whole situation. And he's a creation of Oprah Winfrey, right? And I know you talked about it's probably time for Oprah to come out there and set matters straight there when it comes to Dr. Oz. Um, what are the people in Pennsylvania? What are they saying about Dr. Oz? What is particularly Black voters? What are they saying about Dr. Oz?
You know what Black folks are saying about Dr. Oz. It's just, I think it's odd that we'd even come to, isn't it crazy that we're even having this conversation about Dr. Oz?
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
you got Herschel Walker down in Georgia, right?
exactly. Okay, point taken, point taken. I remember the first time I kind of had a clue about Dr. Oz was I was listening to his program, and he was talking about green tea coffee extracts and how it could help you lose weight. And I remember afterwards, oh, how that's awesome, doing a Google search and not being able to find enough information supporting that dubious claim. And now he could be the next senator from the Keystone State.
Wow. Dr.
I mean,
Chavis, I'm sorry,
come on,
Janine.
Oprah. We need Oprah. Oprah brought us Dr. Oz. Oprah giveth, and Oprah can taketh away. And I'm just, with all respect to Oprah Winfrey, I'm just waiting for her to get involved and endorse the Democratic candidate.
Yeah. Dr. Chavis, how do we get to where we are now to have a Dr. Oz as a front runner, as the nominee for the Republican Party for the Senate?
Well, I agree with Janice. Dr. Oz would not be in this position to misrepresent the state of Pennsylvania in the United States Senate if more people had come out and voted. And so when November comes around, we can't just have 20% of the voters in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia come out to the polls, particularly in African Americans. Across the United States, there are 55 million unregistered voters. And of the 55 million, 10 million are African Americans. 10 million unregistered African American voters. So we got a lot of homework to do in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Florida, in Texas, in my home state of North Carolina, all across the country. We have to get that vote out because so much depends on it. Just like we bemoaned the fact that the census was undercounted. Well, the reason why the census was undercounted because the people at the time, the Trump administration, deliberately did not want Black people to be counted accurately because that determines the disbursement of resources for 10 years. So all these things, elections have consequences. And I can say that not voting also has consequences. They're not going to bode well for Black America or for communities of color. But, we are a blessed people, not a cursed people. We have the power if we exercise it, and that's, I think, has to be what we mobilize over the next few months. We're going to talk about it at the National Convention of the NNPA. But I just want to thank Janice for all of what she continues to do with her pen and with her voice to encourage people to make a change.
Yeah, and our executive administrator of the NNPA, Claudette Perry, points out, and it's a great point, the Los Angeles race for mayor, she says, is an example of how Republicans are also changing to Democrats to push their Republican agenda. Karen Bass's only opponent changed from Republican to Democrat to keep her from winning. He spent $40 million of his own money to challenge her. Janice, that speaks to another problem we've heard about. Some like Bernie Sanders want these the campaign contributions and things like that. They want it streamlined. 40 million of his own money. Money sometimes or oftentimes actually wins elections, right?
It's we gotta, some changes have got to be made because that's not democratic. That's not what how this is supposed to work. Officials are supposed to reflect the will of the American people, not whoever has the deepest pockets. But that's the way it's been, and that's the way it's always going to be, unless some major things change.
Well, and we see that. First of all, let me just point out, as Ms. Perry points out, that Karen Bass is still in the lead at the moment. But but we see things like the insurrection. We see things like this, the big lie, and we see how the Republicans are maneuvering or trying to maneuver in states where they even change the electoral college. They change the secretaries and folks who can influence the outcome of a vote or change the outcome of a vote. That's what the insurrection was all about. So it gets really dicey when you're talking about somebody spending 40 million of their own money, and then you have these other mechanisms in place in which they can be very nefarious in trying to do what Trump tried to do in 2020.
Right. And they're coming up with really inane new policies like you can't feed people while they're waiting in these long lines to vote. I think it's criminal that you didn't even have to stand in a long line to vote. That's a way of cutting down the vote. Because people are busy, they have lives. They can't work, take care of their families, feed, do what they got to do and stand in the line for hours just to exercise their civic responsibility. I really think this should be the next federal holiday declared should be Election Day. That should be a federal holiday so that to encourage employers to give people the day off so they can exercise their civic responsibility. I mean, don't they do that in Australia? We could do that here.
Well, Dr. Chambers and I was in Malawi a couple of years ago, Africa, and we saw something extremely incredible. I mean, you saw everybody engaged, including those who are incarcerated, were freely able to vote. Doc, you recall, and I believe it was 2019, we went to Africa and saw and witnessed that.
Yes, absolutely. I pointed that out to the global media that this African nation, Malawi, had more democracy than the United States in terms of getting out to vote. And they allowed people off that day to make sure that everybody would vote. For some reason, those who want to suppress the vote are fearful of people voting. So they put all these measures to make it more difficult to vote rather than more easy to vote. I was down in Florida some years ago, and I saw those lines, 10, 12 hours to stand in line to vote in the hot sun. Now, in Georgia, they're making it, if you give somebody a bottle of water while they're in the line, that's a crime. You can be arrested. So all these things have consequences. But you know what? They put these obstacles in our path before, and we always find ways to either go over the obstacles, around the obstacles, or through the obstacles. So we still got to, I always say that the antidote to the poison of voter suppression is massive voter turnout.
Yeah, and Janice, in Pennsylvania, obviously, particularly in Philadelphia, because that's that's where you're based out of. But what type of what's the enthusiasm level you would say? Generally, I mean, the midterms sometimes bring people out, and other times it lags. But what's the enthusiasm level you would say in Pennsylvania?
Well, I think there's a lot of bottled up enthusiasm. It's just not reflected. It wasn't reflected during this last election. And I'm hoping it'll be really different come November, that more folks will realize what's at stake and come out and vote. I mean, we didn't have that problem of long lines in Philadelphia, people waiting to vote. No, because a lot of people just didn't even bother. And it's really scary when you think about what we're up against.
Janice, what do you attribute that to? It sounds like a lot of apathy. They're not coming out. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think it's a whole lot of things. Philadelphia is a really poor city, the poorest of the major cities. We've got huge pockets of deep poverty. I just think people are a lot of times in survival mode. And when they think about things to do in the course of their day, this is not at the top of their list. Folks are often working multiple jobs. They got kids and other responsibilities, and they just don't make it out, and they don't make it a priority. And it's a shame. It really is disturbing. And something has got to change before November.
Yeah. So, Dr. Chambers, with that, what's the antidote to that?
Well, I think that, keep in mind, COVID had a devastating impact on Black America, particularly in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. And so I'm not using it as an excuse. I'm just saying that people are just coming out of their shells that self-imposed to protect themselves from COVID-19. And I just want to say on the record this morning, uh, you can't let your guard down. This pandemic is not over with. There's something called long COVID now, and I just don't want Black Americans in particular to get susceptible to even though you've boosted, even though you're vaccinated, you still can get COVID if you don't protect yourself. So I think there's some reluctance of going out in the primaries was also impacted by COVID. But to answer your question, Stacy, and we're going to announce this at the convention. I can just go ahead and announce it now. Working with the Transformative Justice Coalition, was founded by Barbara Armstrong and Jesse Jackson. With the Black press, we're going to team up. We're going to set as a goal to mobilize 10 million new African American voters between now and November. We were divided up each state. I know how many Blacks unregistered in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. We got it all plotted out, and we're going to make sure that the Black press helps lead the way. Because the thing that Reverend Barber, I talked to him yesterday about this march he's going to have on June 18th, is about how we work to not just for one day. Mobilization is every day. It's the consciousness, and so the antidote to voter suppression is to make sure that we don't let anybody lessen the value of our vote, not just at election day, but before election day and then after election day. We got to hold some of these people accountable. It's going back now to Dr. Oz. You can't let Dr. Oz be a United States Senator in Pennsylvania. That's a joke. But it will happen because he's Donald Trump's candidate. That's how he won the primary. The Trumpian influence is still there. People took Trump for granted in 2016, and we cannot take Trump for granted in 2022, and certainly not for granted in 2024.
Well, as we, Doc, you alluded to the convention, the 195th anniversary celebration of the Black Press of America. We talk about, going back with Juneteenth and slavery. Well, the Black Press was founded before slavery ended in New York in 1827, and we are celebrating 195 years of the Black Press this year. Go to NMPA-events.com to register and join us in New Orleans. So much is going to be going on there. So many panels and discussions on topics that directly impact Black America. Amplifying voices of Generation Z and millennials through the Black Press of America will be a panel moderated by Mark Thompson, host of Make It Plain from New York City, Times Square. He is the extraordinary broadcast journalist and commentator for MSNBC, CNN, and of course, the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Thompson and his panelists will explore how do young African Americans view the importance of the future of the Black press. There are several panelists, including Lafayette Barnes, the publisher of The Bridge in Washington, D.C., and others. So join us there, www.nmpa-events.com. Tomorrow, a very, very special Let It Be Known. Please join us. Please send your questions in for EPA Director Michael Regan. He's going to join us live tomorrow morning. We're going to talk about something that's near and dear to Dr. Chavis, environmental injustice, environmental racism, and what the first Black director of the EPA has accomplished already, what he plans to accomplish in the future. Michael Regan tomorrow on Let It Be Known. A very, very special thank you to Janice Armstrong. Janice, we really appreciate you joining Let It Be Known. We hope that this won't be the last time you grace us with your presence. So
It was
thanks
my
so
pleasure.
much. Absolutely. And everybody tune in tomorrow and we will see you then. Thanks for joining Let It Be Known.